Good evening, welcome to ITV News. This is Wednesday night's calendar.
Yes, hello, here are tonight's main stories.
Jared O'Mara is guilty of committing fraud to fund his drug habit. Now there are questions about how the former MP ever became Labour's candidate.
He was selected very centrally without any real discussion of whether he had the skills, background, knowledge or temperament to fulfil the role.
Earthquake tragedy while families in our region watch the disaster from afar. One Yorkshire-based charity is providing vital frontline assistance.
We start to recover and we start to rebuild Syria, and unfortunately this came and put us all in dark.
A church divided. Debate continues over same-sex marriages as the issue comes under scrutiny.
And loving the beautiful game, how one football official from Sheffield could be the world's oldest referee. Thanks for joining us. A disgraced former MP from South Yorkshire is facing jail tonight after a jury found him guilty of trying to claim £24,000 to fund his cocaine habit.
Jared O'Mara, who represented Sheffield Hallam as an MP from 2017 to 2019, made headlines as the first autistic MP. But investigators found he'd actually invented a bogus autism charity to submit fake expenses.
He's been told he must appear before a judge tomorrow, where he could be sent to prison. John Hill has been following the case at Leeds Crown Court. John.
Lara, you know, fraud cases can be complicated. This trial here at Leeds Crown Court has lasted, in fact, 2 weeks. But tonight the jury has decided quite simply former MP Jared O'Mara is a fraudster. As you say, he invented a bogus charity, but investigators found that its postcode actually matched that of a branch of McDonald's in Sheffield. He concocted bogus expenses claims to be paid for by the taxpayer, all to fund an extravagant lifestyle. So tonight his reputation in tatters, all a far cry from 2017, when he caused a political upset when he unseated the former Deputy Prime Minister Sir Nick Clegg, leader of the Lib Dems, from his Sheffield Hallam seat. That went from Lib Dem to Jared O'Mara Labour. But his tenure as the city's MP then, well, it was characterised by controversy. It ended with Labour suspending him over online comments he'd posted before he became an MP. Now, he's lost his seat in 2019. That's the chronology, but the details we've heard today, well, frankly, quite extraordinary. The jury here has heard evidence that O'Mara was taking up to 5 grams of cocaine on some days, drinking a litre of vodka, smoking 60 cigarettes, was thousands of pounds in debt to a drug dealer. And tonight, South Yorkshire Police have released details, audio of a telephone call that his then Chief of Staff made to a South Yorkshire Police call handler who must have had an interesting day at work that particular day, because he was alerting her to what his boss was up to.
Right, so he's false. What's he sending false what?
False expense claim to the tunes of thousands of pounds.
To who?
To IPSA, the governing body for the members of Parliament.
Sorry, who?
The House of Commons, the UK government. Is a member of Parliament.
Well, today Jared O'Mara was found guilty of 6 counts of fraud. The man whose voice you heard there, Gareth Arnold, his former Chief of Staff, was found guilty of 3 out of 6 charges he's faced. A third man, John Woodliff, was found not guilty of 1 offence of fraud.
Well, John, this case is bound to raise lots of questions.
Not least in his home city in Sheffield. People will be scratching their heads perhaps, and one academic, the Professor of Politics at the University of Sheffield, Professor Matthew Flinders, says it perhaps does raise questions about the whole selection process for MPs.
The root of this all goes back to 2017 and the Labour Party not really thinking that this was a winnable seat. Very little thought going into candidate selection, very little resource going into the constituency, and then the Labour Party came right through the middle of the Conservatives and the Lib Dems, and suddenly we have a new MP who was not expecting to be there. Jared O'Mara was a paper candidate. He was put down without any hustings, without any real discussion. He was selected very centrally without any real discussion of whether he had the skills, background, knowledge or temperament to fulfil the role.
Well, the Labour Party isn't issuing a statement because it says ultimately Jared O'Mara became an independent MP. As for Jared O'Mara himself, he hasn't been in the court for these proceedings. He's been following what's been going on via a video link from his home. But the judge ordered him today. He said you must come to court tomorrow for sentencing, where he'll discover his fate.
John Hill live at Leeds Crown Court for us. Thank you.
And of course, there's more on this story, plus other stories from right around our region on our website. Just log on to the usual address, itv.com/calendar.
Next tonight, to the fading hope for survivors among the carnage of earthquakes which have devastated parts of Turkey and Syria, and the fears of those in our region desperate for news of relatives and friends.
Rescue teams have spent a second night working in terrible conditions as the death toll rises to more than 11,000.
Back in Yorkshire, those dedicated to the relief effort and others desperate to hear from loved ones in affected areas are hoping more people can be pulled from the rubble alive. Helen Steele reports.
Slayman Schwish chats happily with his parents now. But when news broke of the devastating earthquake on the Syrian border on Monday, he faced a frantic night until they finally made contact.
My mum called me back, managed to call me back, and she was crying and she was really scared.
Slayman now lives and works in Huddersfield after he fled Syria 10 years ago. He'd faced conscription into the army. His home in Aleppo survived the war, but was destroyed this week by the earthquake.
This is what is really like the heartbreaking, because Syria has been over 10 years over the war, and what has happened in Syria is not easy. And unfortunately this came and put us all in dark.
Over in Dewsbury, charity SKT Welfare aims to provide some light in that darkness. Staff in the office oversee footage from workers out on the ground. It gets translated and forms part of the online emergency campaign.
What does it feel like when you're looking at things like this?
It's really heartbreaking, you know, to see some of the children. You'll see that a lot of the children, they're not with their parents and we don't know who they are.
You can see people crying, like this guy, crying, and it's very emotional, but you still have to do it. It's part of your job role.
They also have hundreds of workers in Syria. None were prepared for the scale of this earthquake. Dr. Nafia El Zahra works in the hospital on the Turkish border, built by the charity in response to the war. It's now overwhelmed with victims of this natural disaster. He spoke via a translator and told us how he had to abandon the rescue of his family.
And at the same time, there were cases in the hospital. People came to the hospital and he couldn't know if he has to go and start to look after his cousins or he go to the hospital and treat the people. They still, until now, under the rubbles, and even they are dead maybe.
The charity still needs £250,000 just to deal with immediate medical costs.
The X-ray unit is there's just queues outside, people waiting for X-rays and for scans so the doctors can be seeing them. We need funds to be able to buy this crucial life-saving medical equipment.
There are many children at the hospital who've lost parents. So even when that life-saving work is done, this charity's work will be far from over. Helen Steele, ITV News.
You're watching Wednesday's calendar, still to come. The latest on Leeds United's search for a new manager, plus the man in the middle. Meet Frank, who could well be the world's oldest football referee.
A man from West Yorkshire who beat his partner to death after a night out has been jailed for life. 26-year-old Lauren Howe was attacked in a flat in Baildon last year. 27-year-old Charlie Booth was found guilty of murder yesterday. Today, a judge sentenced him to life with a minimum term of 15.5 years.
A double-decker bus which aims to drive faster cancer diagnosis in areas with poor early detection rates has been in Barnsley today. Medical staff were on board the NHS facility to make people more aware of symptoms and to encourage them to see their GP for potentially life-saving checks. The chief executive of Barnsley Council is herself a breast cancer survivor.
I did find a lump myself in my breast and went to my GP, and as a result of that I was able to get really early treatment, and I do feel confident now that the cancer has gone. So for me it's really demonstrated that spotting those early signs and getting a GP's appointment and making sure you get checked out is really, really important.
Sometimes people don't want to come forward because they don't want to find out what's going on. That's obviously because cancer is historically linked with no treatment, but that is not the case anymore. There are lots of treatments that are available now. It's a case of actually identifying it. When it is identified, it can be treated and the outcomes can be excellent.
Yeah, some good advice there. Now, should the Church of England allow vicars to bless the relationships of same-sex couples? It's arguably one of the most divisive issues the institution has ever wrestled with, and it has passionate debate this afternoon on both sides.
The discussions are taking place right now at a meeting of the Church's governing body, the General Synod. And there are delegates there from parishes right across our region. James Webster has spent the day at the debate and sent us this update just a short time ago.
These are difficult and at times painful decisions for the Church of England on an issue where there are strongly held views on both sides and everywhere in between. It is 10 years ago this week that MPs voted to allow same-sex marriages, but the Church of England has an exemption and doesn't have to carry out such weddings. Well, today, after a review lasting well over 5 years, bishops are asking around 500 members of the Church's governing body to agree to prayers and blessings for same-sex couples, but not marriages. It is a change which is too much for some and not enough for others.
We have to remind ourselves that Scripture was written over 2,000 years ago on the other side of the world, and our life experience today could not be more different at one level from how it was in the Middle East 2,000 years ago. And so our understanding of God has to be contextual, and it has to reflect how we live our lives today, not how it was lived 2,000 years ago.
Canon Hilary Barber there from Halifax Minster speaking ahead of this debate. We're being here, we've heard the passionate views being expressed inside and also outside, even protests. So on one side there are members of the LGBT community who feel like the Church doesn't welcome them, and then on the other side there are those who say the only relationships that should be recognised are those between a man and a woman.
I think what we've got is a really sad muddle. It's a compromise that is attempting to keep the Church united, but at the cost of the experience of LGBTQ people like myself and LGBTQI people who are both wanting same-sex marriage, and those of us who aren't wanting same-sex marriage. We're all going to be damaged by this compromise.
Well, the debate here began at 2 o'clock. It is really hard to predict what the outcome will be because there are some 28 amendments to the main bishop's proposals which have to be worked through. Some of them try to delay any decision being made. Others try to reject either all or some of what is suggested, either because they want none of it or they want the bishops to come back with full same-sex marriage proposals. It is not overstating it to say that this debate really goes to the heart of what the Church believes and how it interprets what the Bible says. I'll be back here tomorrow with full reaction to whatever has been decided.
James Webster reporting there, and as he said, we'll hear from him again tomorrow. Now, the ITV Evening News continues at 6:30. Here's a look at what's happening with Romilly Weeks.
The earthquake death toll climbs above 11,000 as rescue efforts continue in Turkey and Syria. Anger builds towards the Turkish president over the country's slow response as thousands remain trapped beneath the rubble. Here, the Ukrainian president thanks Britain for its support in a surprise visit to the UK. And is Basel making a comeback? Fawlty Towers could burst back on our screens after more than 40 years. Join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Romilly, thank you, we will. Now it's time for some football and news of another managerial casualty in our region.
Xero Accounting Software sponsors ITV Regional Sports Report.
Well, Arif joins us in the studio. What's been happening at Huddersfield then, Arif?
Well, Lara, Huddersfield Town are now looking for their third manager of the season after sacking this man, Mark Fotheringham, just a few hours ago. His final game in charge was last night's 2-2 draw against 10-man Blackpool. He leaves Town in the Championship relegation zone, having picked up just 5 wins since taking charge in September. Narcis Pelak takes temporary charge while the search starts for another manager.
So that's another manager gone in the region. And what about Leeds United? Because that's the big one, isn't it, that we need to know about?
It is, and we understand that talks have been taking place over the last few days with some potential candidates, but there doesn't appear to be a front runner yet. And owner Andrea Radrizzani tweeted this afternoon to say that he needs more time to find the right man.
Big game tonight, though, for fans to look forward to.
Oh, absolutely, Lara. This is the game that all Leeds fans look for at the beginning of the year. Under-21s manager Michael Skibala will lead the Whites out at Old Trafford tonight as they take on Manchester United. And he told me at his press conference yesterday it will be a dream come true.
I think it's probably every coach's dream, right, to go and lead a team in the Premier League against Manchester United. I've been lucky enough to work hard and been lucky enough to be trusted by the board and Victor and Angus to lead the team out on Wednesday, but I'll be up for this as much as the players and as much as the other coaching staff will be, so it's very exciting.
So there was FA Cup action last night, wasn't there, when Sheffield United, well, they swept away Wrexham, didn't they?
Oh, it was. This was a classic cup tie, Lara, if there ever was one. And Sheffield United left it late to book their place in the next round of the competition. The Blades scored 2 late goals as they beat Wrexham 3-1 at Bramall Lane. United captain Billy Sharp scored the second, and after the game spoke of his unhappiness at the behaviour of the Wrexham players.
I think they've been disrespectful though. A few things before the game, thinking they was already through. I'm glad we've beat them. I wasn't happy with a few of their players tonight, but a few of their players I wasn't happy with, and a little bit frustrated at the end there. I should have probably put the game to bed before I did, but yeah, it's one of them things. I want to win and want to get through to the next round.
Not a happy man, is he? Well, Sheffield United's run in the competition has come to an end, though. A much-changed Wednesday side lost 1-0 in their replay with Fleetwood. Lee Gregory came closest for the Owls, but his header hit the bar. Manager Darren Moore said after the game that the fans didn't get the performance that they deserved. Well, it's been a busy few days of sport, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. It just keeps coming, doesn't it, Arif? Thank you.
Better to keep you busy anyway. That's true. Now then, staying with sport, we may have FA Cup replays and the waiting game for new managers, but football's all about the grassroots, and tonight we salute a local hero of the game.
Oh, he's lovely. Frank Foster was in action at the weekend, officiating at junior games. He's been a Football Association referee for 43 years, but he says he's got no plans to hang up his whistle, even though he's now believed to be the world's oldest referee at 89 years old. We sent Martin Fisher to meet him.
You might not see the referee greeting players like this in the Premiership, but Frank Foster has always liked to build up a bond with the teams he's in charge of.
It's a love of football. To be out in the fresh air, giving either young boys, young girls, ladies or men, my expertise of how a football game should be.
Frank was a talented footballer himself until injury forced him to turn to blowing the whistle instead. He's always been ahead of the game, championing women's football decades before the popularity it now enjoys.
Come on leaps and bounds, which I'm very pleased to see this. When I'm doing the Sheffield University ladies, wow, it's terrific. It's terrific.
For his family, his ability to keep going is inspiring, but not surprising.
Yeah, his passion for the game, you know, like he literally sits and watches Premier League matches and he'll watch it as a referee. He doesn't just sit and watch it as a fan like the rest of us. So he's constantly learning, and the amount he's had to adapt to over the 4-5 decades that he's been doing football. Yeah, it's just been amazing.
Right, he's fit,
Yeah, and like he just carries on and like just keeps himself in the game the entire time. And he runs a horse the whole entire pitch, back and forwards, back and forwards.
On the pitch, he's known for taking no nonsense from players. No bad play from these under-7s, of course, and Frank won't tolerate it from the adults.
When a person comes in and does a late tackle, I go, "You're a bit late there, sunshine, weren't you? You're a bit late there. You know, you're a better player than this. Come on, come on."
Frank will be 90 in June and has no plans to give up refereeing.
I keep going until I can't keep up with them, and then that'll go back to coaching. Before a match, when I do talk to them, I would like to add and don't run very fast.
For this man in black then, age really is just a number. Martin Fisher, ITV News in Sheffield.
Oh, there's no messing with Frank, is there?
Certainly not. Proof, in fact, if proof were needed, that keeping fit keeps you young. And he's out in all weathers, and Kerry's here in all weathers. How are you doing?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm all right. How are you two? You okay?
Yeah, thank you.
It's a bit chilly this morning, wasn't it? Some people are just out and about first thing, taking some photographs for me. This was Winterset first thing. A big thank you to Sue Bilcliffe. You can see she just popped a little bit of feed on that chair there. Awesome view from that seat. And Bob Robin just came for breakfast. Bless him. We had some gorgeous shots as well. Higher up, this was Windhill in the Peak District. The cloud sitting in the valley bottom there, almost looking like waves, trapped by a very small layer of warm air that basically kept the cold and cloudy conditions in the valley bottom all morning. But Paul Rudd of Doncaster was there at 7:45 in the colder and clearer conditions way up. So a big thank you for all the photos. Some nice sunsets at the moment. Well, why? Well, why are they red at sunsets or at sunrise? Light has further to travel through the lower atmosphere, and the shorter wavelength blues and the greens get scattered. So we get to see the longer wavelengths, yellows and reds. But what else contributes? Well, thin cloud can sometimes act as a filter, and also high pressure, like we've had over recent days, acts as a lid, basically trapping the dust particles, sometimes a bit of pollution in the cities in the lower atmosphere, also acting as a filter. And also coastal sunrise and sunsets can be more vibrant due to suspended salt and water vapour just above the sea, again acting as a filter and diffusing the light. How amazing is that? Yeah, this was taken first thing this morning, Leeds sunrise. I think Jamie Taylor was looking just north and west because the light will have been filtered there from a little bit of high cloud that's been nudging in today from the northwest. But no worries about the pollution or anything. We've got some strong winds actually tonight, and that's going to mix the air up a little bit as we head through tonight and into tomorrow. And full forecast is very, very shortly.
Thanks, Kerry. We'll look forward to that.
Certainly is.
Now, just before the forecast, we've some royal news just come in. York Minster's announced it'll host the King and Queen Consort's first Royal Maundy service in April. The city played host to the royal couple last year during King Charles's first visit to Yorkshire as monarch. Now, on April the 6th, 74 men and 74 women from the Church of England, reflecting the King's age, of course, will receive the Maundy as a gift to thank them for their service. The last time the monarch performed the Maundy service in York was in 2012 when the duty was carried out by the late Queen. It'll be a right royal occasion.
Yeah, I remember actually quite a few visits by the royal family for Maundy Thursday over the years. So that'll be really nice, won't it, to have King Charles here and, of course, the Queen Consort. Now then, the Queen of the Weather now. Here's Kerry with the forecast for us.
Good visibility on the horizon. TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
Hello again. So we did okay today, some nice hazy sunshine, staying mostly dry, but those winds gathering strength and it will become quite blustery, especially over the tops of the Pennines overnight tonight, gusts in excess of 45 miles an hour for a time. And then from tomorrow all the way through to the weekend, mostly dry, but with variable amounts of cloud. So it's this system that comes through overnight tonight, and then the high pressure basically rebuilds to southern parts of the UK. All the unsettled stuff stays further north, and we're basically in the middle. So Mostly dry, but with variable amounts of cloud. So overnight tonight, we've just got that system to come through from the northwest. It tends to fizzle out as it pushes south. There'll be a little bit of rain on it initially, but generally just a cloudier spell pushing south, and then behind that, drier, clearer and colder, and those strong and gusty winds gradually easing, just a little bit of a breeze remaining over the Pennines as we head towards dawn, but elsewhere there's a real risk of frost as we head towards the early part of tomorrow morning. A big thank you to Pat Reynolds for this great shot taken from a garden in Yeadon. 7:39 and 5:03 are your Thursday sun times. It's mostly dry, bright, frosty to begin tomorrow. There will be some cloud coming and going throughout the day, but it stays dry. There's a little bit of a breeze and exposure over the mountain tops, but nothing too significant. And in shelter from the breeze, in the brighter spells, it won't feel too bad for the time of year once more. 8, 9, maybe a rogue 10 Celsius. As we head through closer towards the weekend on Friday, perhaps a little bit more cloud around and maybe even a little bit of something like rain or drizzle over the tops of the Pennines and a bit of mist and murk here. The further south and east will get the brighter spells. Cloudy at times over the coming few days, a little less cold, but mostly dry.
TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
There's your forecast. Now check out our final photo tonight. Simon Walkden had to share his Peak District view this morning with these 4 macaws.
Imagine walking through the Peak District and seeing 4 macaws. Yeah. Aren't they amazing?
I know, absolutely gorgeous.
And apparently they're someone's pets.
They are pets. They've even got their TikTok accounts. I think it's called Motley's Adventures. So there you go.
Of course they have. Of course they have. That's it for now. I'm back at 10:30. Hope you can join me. But from all of us, good night.
Good night. See you tomorrow.
Bye.